Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sean and Sax Show. As you can see, we're changing. Well, maybe you can't see. You can't tell. This is our first podcast from the new Lions on a Sheep Studios. This is just an interesting thing. We're back, actually. This is one of the original warehouses that we had, and this is where we did our very first episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
our whole first season.
Are now turning this entire warehouse, which used to be the man cave, for those of you that don't know us or have been to a Lion's Den, like a fly-in or whatever else. This is where that all started. And so I've had this warehouse for a couple years, 3 years, 2 years, I don't even know. And
at least 3.
Putting together a really cool deal with my dear friend Jeremy, extraordinary producer, videographer, filmmaker, storyteller, and we're building out a whole pianist, singer, whole media center, which is going to be really cool. So the Sean and Sax Show will be housed here. Well, I shouldn't say housed. Will be done here. The Sean Whalen Show will be done here. We've got a lot of stuff cooking, all in. A lot of the things that we have in the works and being worked on are kind of coming back to our spot. I feel like this is our spot.
This is.
You know what I'm saying?
It is. It's basically.
Everything comes full circle eventually. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Happy to be back.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really matter. They're all great.
Yeah. So we went on a trip, and the trip was great. We haven't talked about the trip yet because we just got back. Tell everybody really quick about the trip.
Sean took me
30 seconds or less.
Sean took me to Switzerland and Italy for my 40th birthday.
Yes, it was good.
And it was fabulous.
It was good.
Oh my gosh. If Italy, this is not 30 seconds. If Italy was a zodiac sign, it would be Leo. It's just so extra. And it's just like,
what are you talking about right now?
Look at me. And I just loved every moment of
Switzerland or Italy?
Italy. Oh, Switzerland is like just stunning.
Yeah.
And it's not Leo. It's not loud and in your face. It's so incredibly beautiful. I literally fell in love with Switzerland.
Yeah, it was cool. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring that up, and I would just want to, you can tell, 30 seconds, 2 minutes. I don't think people care about our vacation. And it was really cool, though. We went and had a fun time, and we went and saw all the things, and highly recommend doing it, renting a car. A lot of people go to Europe, and they do like the train thing or this, that, or the other. I love going and getting a car because we can drive. We can do whatever we want. We can stop in random places. Plus the road trip. We did kind of like a loop. We went from Switzerland to Lake Como to Venice to Rapallo, and then to Milan. Mm-hmm. But all of them were like 2.5 hour to 3 hour drives.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Unless you leave your passports in a safe.
I don't ever leave anything in safes, ever. I just don't. And maybe I shouldn't say that because people steal all my shit, but whatever. But for one time, I put stuff in a safe, and we left Lake Como and got almost all the way to Venice, and phone rings, and I'm like, oh, why is somebody from Italy calling me? And it was the hotel. They're like, hey, Mr. Whalen, we were cleaning your room and opened up the safe, and instantly I was like, fuck.
Shoot.
And so I was like, do we get a helicopter? What do we do? Because it was 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we were 2 hours away.
So anyways, it was a great trip. Highly recommend it. Do it. Yeah, it's really cool.
It was my first time.
It's fun.
I mean, 40th birthday, first time. It was absolutely lovely. So.
Yeah.
Thanks, love.
You're welcome. We want to talk about something. We had a conversation the other day, and part of the trip we got into some shit and had a little bit of a tiff, just naturally because Sax just has these moments in time that she loses touch with reality and goes off into crazy land. We all know what this is about, right? Anyway, so Sax goes off into crazy land, and we got into this space and the whole thing. But what I wanted to talk about is 2 things. Number one, the fact that like we don't. I feel like our disagreements are things. Call them arguments. I don't really care. I don't give a shit what we call them. We can call them whatever we want. People want to be politically correct, say they never argue. Bullshit. You're full of shit. We'll call it an argument, right? Disagreement. Ours are shortening. We used to go for a really long time, right? But the biggest takeaway that I've had from this trip and in that conversation and part of our disagreements and our arguments was the conversation we had the other day where I shared with you some stuff And I think we're trying to put yourself into a different place of hearing, because we talked about this. I was telling you, I don't feel like you hear me. I don't feel like you understand what I'm talking about. And you said something to me following that up where you're like, I hear you. I heard what you said. Right?
Yes.
And that's a big thing. I don't like when people are like, hey, here's how you should argue. I don't like that. For me, it's just not a thing, right? I don't think there's a proper way to argue. I definitely think there's proper ways to communicate. There's proper ways to navigate sticky situations or whatever. I don't feel like teaching people, hey, here's how you should argue. It's almost like, yay, let's like get excited about this. However, there's ways of communication that are very powerful. And there's ways of communication as from a guy's perspective that, you know, when you said the other day, I hear you, I heard you, right? Being able to follow that up and explain that. And I think this goes both ways, right? Because you want to be heard, I want to be heard. This was a different dynamic for us in conversations because you've never done that before. You never come back and be like, hey, I heard you. Normally it's kind of like, yeah, we're good. And we kind of keep going and we move on to the next thing, which is fine, right? We don't always have to have these huge State of the Union conversations around, hey, here's what I learned in this argument. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm feeling. Let's like write it out on the refrigerator. Sometimes you just handle your shit. You're having a bad day. You're acting like a dick. You move on to the next day, right? But when you want to actually progress and know that like change is happening and know that certain things are important, I feel really strongly that like the conversation of saying, I hear you, and then following that up with, here's what I hear, here's what I understand, and here's what I'm experiencing. And we talked about this last night on date night, right? I'm like, what exactly do you mean by that, by hearing me? And number two, like, what does that mean? Talk about that for a second. And before you say that, like, I feel like I can only speak for myself. I can only speak on behalf of being a man. Like, it's hard sometimes for us to do this. I think it's equally hard probably for women to do this, where, you know, you have to kind of swallow that pill of saying, okay, I'm not going to make this about me. This isn't about my shit. I hear my partner. I'm going to talk about my partner. I'm going to talk about what I hear them saying, follow that up so that you can really build a connection versus it being like, yeah, okay, cool. Let's just move on to the next thing.
Right. Well, what came to me was something that I say to you often is acknowledge me, acknowledge how I feel, acknowledge what you did that hurt my feelings or whatever it is, right? And that was my thing, is I was like, I really know how fulfilling an acknowledgement is for me. And so, you know, meanwhile, we were very jet lagged when all this happened, which is kind of funny. But I said, you know what? He just wants to be acknowledged. He wants what he was upset about, or not upset, whatever you want to call it, is you just wanted to be acknowledged, that like what you said mattered. And I thought, you know, that's exactly what I want. And there's no pride in like acknowledging it. And so to me, it was just like, I came back to you and said, hey, listen, like I did hear you. I do hear you. And I knew it was powerful to hear that, because that's always what I want from you. You know, I always am craving that. And so just kind of, I just took note of that. And it's like, because I did hear you, you know, and it does. Another thing is like, I think me expressing like, hey, like what you shared with me, I do care about that. I cared that mattered to you, you know? And sometimes in the heat of the argument, it's hard to say that. Especially when you haven't slept in 20 some odd hours and you're jet lagged and have no business having a fight. You should just go to bed.
Yeah. You'd be like,
But
it's just bedtime.
I was like, I think we just need to go to bed now. But yeah, you know, it was just simply that. It was like, I can just acknowledge that mattered to you. It doesn't mean I completely understand it, but I'm willing to try and understand that because I care about you.
One of the things that we learned in communication, which is really for two fire alphas, people like us that are like, you know, alphas, fire, what are we? What's the sign?
I don't know, fiery.
You're all about the Leos, the bullshit. What are we? We're fire.
Yeah.
Is that what we are? We're fire, right?
Leo and Sagittarius.
Yeah, all that good stuff. When you have two people like that, or I think anybody for that matter, you know, when you're
Enneagram 8s, we're both Enneagram 8s. If anybody's Enneagram fan, my daughter got me all into that. A lot of people are into that. I don't.
Yeah, this is important, and this is something big for me, and I truly think it's big for a lot of people where we have an impasse of, as we're communicating. One of the strategies that we've learned from our coach is when you're repeating back and you're saying, "I hear you," because dude, we're creatures, and I would love to become proficient at this. I would love to say that I'm an expert at this, that I'm like thoroughly listening and I'm hearing everything and I'm digesting everything, and I have no thoughts in my brain about my response or my feelings or my emotions or my response. I would love to say that I'm like that. I'm not. And I think anybody who says that they are, maybe, I bet you there might be one or two or people that are monks that are like that. But I think for the vast majority of people, I don't know, are they? Some of them might be.
I'm just kidding.
Anyways, I think a majority of the people, for me, I'm always thinking, like, I'm always like wanting to respond to what you're saying with my, my words, my thoughts, my feelings. My rebuttal. And not even rebuttal, like not necessarily even like an argument or rebuttal, but like we're creatures like this. And one of the things that happened the other day that I'm starting to see that we're getting better at is realizing, like, when you can break down a lot of the barriers of saying, we're all in, we're not going anywhere, right? You kind of take all of these things off the table that become points of conflict. Like, we're not ending our marriage every single fucking conflict.
No.
We're not walking away. We're not, these aren't extreme things. And we're extreme people. A lot of our disagreements, a lot of our heat, our fire is very, very, very hot. And so
I think it's we're very prideful in a positive way. Like,
right.
we have a lot of we're just very prideful. We love ourselves. We expect a lot. We know we deserve a lot. And so that comes with that, when things happen, it's like we have really low tolerance. We also have
giant fucking egos
yes.
that we want to prove our point and spike the ball. We do.
Right.
Period. We both do. And I think the reason I love this conversation and I wanted to talk about this today is because I feel like we're like a lot of people. A lot of people are like us. We might be like a little bit higher up on the crazy scale or the crazy hot matrix, right? We might be all over that matrix, but I really do feel like a lot of people, we vibe like a lot of people. And if this is an issue for me and something that's going on with me and us, I guarantee you other people experience the same thing.
Sure.
And this is where, like, we have our pride and we have our ego and we want to make our point and share our feelings and make sure that we're heard. And you never really get to a place of actually hearing anything because you're constantly in this state of, trying to prove the point, spike the ball, win. I mean, whether it's you want to win or not, we're always talking about that. Do you want to be right or do you want to win? Or no, how do you say it? Do you want to win or do you want to be right? Which way is it?
No, I think, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
I don't know, whatever. But when you're when you're in a place, and what we're experiencing is like when someone's talking and they're done talking and you say, okay, so here's what I'm hearing you say. That takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of empathy, but it also takes a lot of desire to want to progress and to want to move. And I feel like it's a ridiculously difficult thing to do, especially when your brain is going 1,000 miles an hour. You're wanting to prove the point. You are how we are. But that moment when you were like, I heard what you said, and you were like telling me back what it was very, very powerful for me, because I'm like, okay, cool. Now I know that she hears what I'm saying. The other reason that this is hugely important, especially in that moment of call it conflict, argument, whatever, is there's a lot of times that I'll say something and you don't even hear what I'm saying. Or you'll say something and I heard something totally fucking different. We're really good
at that.
We're very good at that. And I think a lot of people are. And so when you're talking and you're sharing something, and when you're done, you say like, okay, I'm done. And my response is, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is this. And you could be like, no. I didn't say any of that shit. This is what I'm saying.
Which is typically how it goes. I'm like,
right.
Whoa, nope, that's not at all what I said.
Right. Because when we get in our own minds and our own places and our ego and frustration,
we hear through and I bring this up when we fight. I'm like, we hear and see through the lenses of what we want to see, or in some type of lens from the past, or something like we're expecting things to go a certain way, so we see it that way.
Right.
And I was joking that I'm like, I feel like the minute we start arguing or we have a conflict, we should start like a voice recorder, because then it's like it's the ultimate truth of what was said.
Yeah. Well, then you just go mute because no one wants to say anything. Be like, I'm not going to incriminate myself. Fuck you.
It's so true.
Sax used to do this to me all the
I
time.
did.
Actually, like, I'm going to
I'd be
record.
like, I'm going to
And
record
guess
you
who says it now?
because
Now I'm like, yo, let's record this. She's like, no, I'm not going to say anything. We're not going to record the shit. I'm like, because you know I'm right. And then it turns into some petty bullshit, which is literally the exact opposite of what we're talking about.
Right. I'm more of like, we're just not doing that.
Yeah.
But it's funny because sometimes I'm like, maybe we should, just so it's like very literal.
But we're getting better at this. And this is something that I really feel passionately about with our relationship is like, we both struggle with a lot of things. We both have past. We both have history. We both have fear. We both have our own set of issues and trauma, whatever you want, put whatever label you want, right? And I feel like everybody does. If people are really honest with themselves, like everybody's got their own fears, whether you've been, especially if you've been divorced, right? And remarried.
Humans are just complex.
Right, we are.
We just are.
But this is what's dope about it is it's like once you get through that and you realize like, look, we're not going anywhere. We're not ending this. This isn't a war that's like cataclysmic. You know, you kind of ratchet it down a little bit. But when you can actually get to a place where you're conversing this way, I feel like it calms things down quite a bit. But when you actually feel heard and you can repeat and share and orate that, it really is a skill set. I want to say that too. Sure. This is not something where you're like, oh yeah, I read the book, I'm an expert at it. No, fuck you, you're not. Like bullshit. This is without question no different than working out, no different than building a business. It's like radical repetition to become better at that because our brains are prone to fire. Our brains are prone to like, let me tell you how I feel about this. Here's where I'm at. Like,
well,
well, you said this, but
well, personalities like us, because I would say not everyone's like that. Because if you have a tendency to be more of a doormat, you're not going to be like this at all.
Right. But
you and I we strive to win, and so in all areas of life we strive to win, and so it's like, but I can see how certain people, like, there's different ways of, you fight, you flight, you fawn, you freeze, whatever, and so yeah. Well, two fighters fight. Now I'm also a freezer sometimes.
Well, let's talk about that because like you that is real. Like and there's also the I'm just going to stop talking.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything. And then I'm going to try and let this thing just pass. And I think that's very toxic. I think it's really, I don't like the word. I don't know why I say
stonewalling.
That word,
as if you want to take the term that is used for that, they call it stonewalling. So with me, like previously, and I've talked about this on the show, like when I was in a place, honestly, it was more so when I was a place when I was really struggling with my health. I didn't have the bandwidth to even like, I just didn't. Like before I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I didn't have the bandwidth to have conflict. I would I would check out because I was not feeling well, right? I just wasn't in a good space, but that's not my norm. Like that wouldn't be, but it isn't a healthy place because to me, it's like, you're not going to break through unless you break through. Right. And so when you get together in a relationship, I mean, it's the unfortunate truth is I have yet to meet a couple on the planet that got out of the lustful honeymoon stage and really got into like building a life together that didn't run into like, some sharp edges. And how do you navigate that? It's just the reality. And it doesn't mean it's like we don't really have like a really like crazy life. We don't fight often, but when we do, it's just like, we're intense. And so I realized it's like, it is very healthy to get it out, to address it, because it will come out no matter what. I mean, even if you bury it deep down inside, that's where the dis-ease of disease comes from. Like it will manifest itself somehow. So you might as well just address it right at the spearhead and get through it, as uncomfortable as it is. And that's why we talk about it on this show. That's why you and I talk about it with each other. But in those moments of repeating back, I really struggle with in the moment repeating back. It's funny as I've thought about it, like you'll be like, what did I just say? And I'm literally like, because my ADD is very real. And sometimes when we're in that moment, I'm just like, there's so many things going on, so many words, because Sean and I both have a lot of words that I literally can't. I'm like, I don't know what you just said. Yeah. I'm like, you lost me 5 minutes ago. I don't know. But it is in there and I do care. But what happens with me is and this is very much normal for me, is I process things slower. You know, like Jay Shetty and his wife did a thing on this, and she's a slow processor. She likes to step back and be like, I need to like think about this. I need to feel it. And he's like, no, like now. And that's what they talk about. They have a lot of conflict with that. But he's like, I realize that she's actually better at this because she's not impulsive. She sits with it, and then she makes she'll make a decision based on like some thought. And I do that. So that's why when I came to you later and I'm like, hey, listen, like I do hear you. I did think about it. So even though it's in the moment, sometimes it's like, I don't know. It really does absorb in. It's just in the moment I can't. So that whole tool of sometimes that our coach is like, now you're supposed to repeat back. I'm like, I don't know what he said. Like maybe I need to take notes.
So what do you do then? Because that's not good communication, dude.
Then we need to break it up into like 30-second increments, not 15 minutes or 6 minutes, because you'll lose me. So it's really all your fault, babe. I'm just kidding.
Or you should start taking notes. That is one
thing. Okay, hold on. We're fighting. Where's my notepad?
Yeah. Well, this is like that. That's real because it's helped me too. Because I do go on and you go on, and you start just rambling. And sometimes like when you're in, there's a lot of different ways people would look at this or talk about this, or we could break down this conversation and people would analyze this. Cause it's like, sometimes the conversations you just need to hear your person, right? Let them talk, let them get their shit out and be like, okay, cool. It'll be good. Right. But there's other times where like, hey, this is real. Like this is important, right? Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between me having a big day and coming home and being like fire going off. Yeah. We're not in conflict or arguing. And you're just like, yep. I don't need you to say anything. You can just sit there and look hot and listen and be like, yeah, cool. Okay. Let's eat dinner now. Okay. And I'm like, fine. But when you're in that place of like, we need to get somewhere with this. Like we need to be heard. We need to talk. Being able to stop at the end and truly like repeat back what you heard is a really, really powerful thing. Mm-hmm. It's a radically powerful thing. I mean, you want to talk about connection and real true growth. When you can get to that level of the game to where you're really hearing somebody and understanding, and when you repeat back, you're actually repeating back what you heard and what they're speaking is truth. Like it's really hard to be in a place of ego there. You know what I mean? I've found that like when you're able to come to the table and in a communicative way, repeat back what you heard, share what you heard, and you acknowledge that, like we're prone to be like, hey, like you want that emotional like stimuli of being like, hey, you know what I mean? Like I want you to feel how I'm feeling right now. And just, I don't really care if you even heard me kind of a thing. It does change the game. Mm-hmm. It changes the game in a major way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
For sure. One of the greatest tools I've learned with you is literally biting my tongue. I'm like biting my tongue in my mouth. I'm like, just don't, because 90% of the things that you say when we're arguing, like it's not even worth addressing because sometimes it's so, and it is. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, don't acknowledge it, Saxony. Don't acknowledge it. And that's a good tool. Because I'm just like, just let him get it out.
So you can see why we have conflict, because she just focuses on biting her tongue, not actually hearing the shit that I'm saying. Hey, can you repeat back? No, sorry, my tongue hurts.
I have 2 ears.
My tongue hurts because I've been biting it so long. What'd you say again? Oh, Lord have mercy. That's one of the other things too that we were talking about on the trip is like just figuring this thing out, man. Mm-hmm. Having a lot of grace, like really, I this might sound really simple to a lot of people, but something that I'm realizing and getting better at and acknowledging more and more and more in our relationship is like how we have a lot of great people around us. Tonight, we're going to go see our guy, Matt, and chop it up with him, our coach, to sharpen the sword and learn more. But like, a lot of this stuff boils down to just choosing your partner and choosing to be with this person and choosing to like learn how to communicate. And I think that's really the overarching thought process in this conversation is like really choosing to communicate, choosing to connect with your person. Mm-hmm. We're not good at that. As human beings, I feel like this is like part of our major disconnect is that we don't hear people. We're so fucking busy trying to respond and trying to get our 2 cents in in our point. You see that across every facet of politics to religion to whatever. You don't even hear what people are saying. You're so busy loading the chamber of your gun to just blast the second they stop talking or before they stop talking. You start fucking firing back. It's like, no wonder we get disconnected and we feel so apart. And that's right. I've been there for a lot of my life, and us getting to a place where we can actually start sharing, communicating, hearing, listening back, So what I'm hearing you say is,
another really good thing too is not, like, we used to be really bad, not really bad, but we used to not be good at keeping to one topic. It was like, we'd be mad about one thing and then we'd bring up another thing and then another thing and then another thing. And it's just like, oh my gosh.
You're good at that. You're really good at that.
It's like, stay on, like, let's talk about this. Let's handle this. But if we bring in the whole freaking, like, every dirty dish that we've ever had, like, what are you going to do with that? Like, you're going to overwhelm the system anyways. Like, staying, like, to the, and sometimes I do, like, I just dismiss it. I'm like, no, we're not even, nope, we're not talking about that. What is this problem? Like, let's address this. Because it's like, it just becomes, that's when you just are just throwing, like, that's almost like when you just want to fight. Like, you're just, well, I've got this and I've got this, but.
You like pulling out all the dirty dishes.
Do I?
Sometimes. So the practical tool that we're learning, that we're getting better at, that we like, is when your person's talking, when they're done talking. So what I'm hearing you say is, and fill in the blank. Try it. Put it in your pipe and smoke it. Give it a whirl. See how it works. What percentage would you say that we do that?
Getting better at it.
Are we even on the scale? Our scale, we're for sure doing way better.
Oh yeah. I think what would be the thing we could work on the best is shortening our increments.
Right. Of talking.
Because like, we both know that the other person on the other side just like, it's almost like I can, like, Sean can probably see my face. I'm like,
you just black out.
I'm like,
just
and good night.
Like, do you even know where we are right now? It's good. Communicate better, man. It always boils down to that.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is, fill in the blank. It's a powerful thing.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I love it too. We don't, at least me, I'll speak for myself. Like, I don't take things as seriously anymore. Like, when we were driving the next day, I was just like, you know what? Like, yeah, we're going to go see Matt, but we're not going to go in there and we're not going to, like, no, we're going to go in there with a freaking plan. And we're going to sharpen our sword, and we're not going to go in there and just bitch. And it was like, because I just don't want to do that. Like, let's just go in there and sharpen our sword. You were like, okay. Like, because I used to take things a lot more to heart.
Yeah.
I used to take things a lot. And it's interesting because I don't really know what changed, other than I guess we've just been really working on building a really great relationship for quite a few years now. And it's like, like, a
lot of the stuff you think you're mad about, you're really not mad about. And this is part of the communication. Like, when you're bringing up 62 different things, you're like, really? Like, we're going to bring up 62 things? Like, do we even need to? Like, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like that's a powerful place to be when you're just like, move on. We talked about this with, like, Andy and Emily when we were talking about Emily. I said, what do you guys fight about? What do you and Andy fight about? She's like, we really don't that much, because we're so focused on the big picture. When you're in the weeds and you're in the bullshit, that's when you typically tend to be way fired up on stupid stuff that doesn't really matter.
I'm just surprised that, I don't know. I'm just surprised they don't fight. Because when you have
I'm sure they do.
I'm like, because I'm just like, I don't know.
I think everybody does.
I'm like, I just don't know. I feel like everybody does, because, like, you're just going to rub up against it.
Right.
Like,
but it's a good thought process to have, to realize,
sure.
Like, when you step back and look at a lot of the things that we disagree on or argue about or get butt sore about or whatever, a lot of it's really not that important. It's not that big. It's just our own stupidity. It's our own ego. It's our own pride,
Yeah. I think we're doing great. We're doing great.
So communicate, ladies and gentlemen, friends. And when, guys, I'll speak to you when your wife is talking. I know that we want to just be like, burp, 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 burp. Okay. listen, and then when she's done talking, say, so what I'm hearing you say is, and repeat it back, and she'll love you for it. It'll be great, and you'll actually be really connected.
And acknowledge. Not only acknowledge what you hear, acknowledge what the impact of whatever it is that was negative on your partner. Because to me, it's like sometimes all I want to know is that you understand how I felt in that situation. Doesn't mean that you need to go, whip yourself or like go punish yourself. It's not about that. It's like most of the time, I just want you to know, like, hey, like that had an effect on me, and just say, hey, like I acknowledge that when I said that, like, that was not, I didn't actually say that very kindly, and I could have totally handled that differently. And it's just like, oh, that like right, even me, it's like that melts my heart. That's all I. It's not like I need I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It's just like, no, like just acknowledge that happened. It doesn't make you a horrible person. It's just like we step on each other's toes. Like it just happens. Like you have days you're cranky. You have days like you're overwhelmed. There's just days that like the bandwidth of being your highest self is just not really there. You're just not your highest self. And so you're going to rub up against your partner sometimes, and just acknowledge, like, I love that. And I try to.
You love what, rubbing up against your partner?
Yes, very much.
I do too. I like that a lot.
Very much.
It's great.
So yeah, and it's like, like that's why with me, it's like I'm like, okay, I hear you. I don't necessarily agree with like how you feel, but I can see that matters to you, and so I can do better at that. There's like, I'm not, there's no fixed position of me in my life. Like, of course, I'm like, okay, I am satisfied with XYZ. You're not satisfied with XYZ. Okay, like I can spend more time at that. Goes both ways. Like some women, like, I want you to take me on date night. I want you to tell me nice things. Like, okay, like I'll do that. I can just tell you more nice things. Cool, whatever. It's not. I mean, we all can do it. These are not hard, big asks.
Right.
Like you and I don't have big asks.
No, but when your ego's involved, it's huge.
Well, it's more like, do you know how much I already do for you? You should just be so fulfilled. And you're like, yeah, but I'm not.
Yeah, but. Yeah, but.
Yeah, but.
Yeah. Okay, good chat.
Good chat.
So what I'm hearing you say is you want to rub up against me.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think that's a great place for us to stop. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go rub up against each other. Thank you so much for listening. We would love for you to share this podcast and go rub up against somebody. See ya. Bye.
Okay, love you. Bye.